Hello, everyone. Welcome to Developod. That's the podcast from IATEFL TDSIG. That's the Teacher Development Special Interest Group. We are sponsored by Nile, Cambridge, and Bridge. And as usual, I'm Helen. And on today's episode, I am very fortunate to be having a conversation with Dr. Harry Kuchah Kuchah. Harry, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, Helen.
To start off, Harry, could you describe your ELT self to our learners? Who are you in the ELT community?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Well, I'll start with the African ELT community. I'm more
Hmm.
now like a granddad, a retiring granddad, looking at young, aspiring, energetic, and very creative professionals
Hmm.
on the continent and supporting them as much as I can.
Hmm.
But outside that, I am also uh, it's a privilege to have led IATEFL. Uh,
Hmm.
I'm one of the past presidents of IATEFL,
Yes.
and I've also done a number of things around ELT, supporting, for example, the British Council. I'm
Hmm.
currently chair of the British Council English Language Advisory Group.
Hmm.
But that's all what I am today, and there's a very long journey that's led me to this
Hmm.
from my very humble beginnings in rural parts of Cameroon, where I
Hmm.
come from, to coming to the UK and studying here and going back to my job in the Ministry of Education as a policymaker, and eventually
Hmm.
coming back to embark on an academic career
Hmm.
around applied linguistics and language education. So it's a mix, it's a bag full of lots of experiences and a really amazing journey. I'm happy to have walked this far.
Hmm. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you, Harry. You're currently at the University of Birmingham, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
All right. And what does your work there look like?
Right. Okay. So I lead on the I'm program director for the MSc TESOL program.
Hmm.
And I also do supervise a number, at the moment, I supervise four PhD students looking at different aspects of language education and multilingual education as well. So that's primarily what I do, but I
Hmm.
also do support colleagues, younger colleagues, in terms of mentoring
Yeah.
and helping with their academic development as well.
Hmm.
So yeah, and I really do enjoy it. It's not very often we enjoy the job we do, but
Yeah.
here I really do enjoy my job at Birmingham, but also because I've got space to work with real classroom teachers,
Hmm.
particularly in different parts of the global south. So
Yeah.
I do see what they do, share experiences with them, learn
Hmm.
from them as well on a daily basis.
Hmm.
Mm.
Sounds to me like a lot of community work and a lot of relationship building and maintaining.
Exactly, because listen, we are not. That's my view of life. It's based on the principle of Ubuntu.
Hmm.
I am because you are.
Yeah.
So I don't see myself as an individual navigating the professional space. I see
Hmm.
myself as part of a team that's
Hmm.
made up of different people.
Hmm.
And those people, there are some high up the experience ladder, but there are some who are just beginners,
Hmm.
and they come with fresh ideas, and I feel enriched when I interact with these different people. Yeah.
Hmm. We all have something to learn from each other.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Super. So, this year, I don't know if you know that TDSIG has turned 40 years old.
40, yeah, that's
40 years.
that's amazing. 40 years.
Yeah.
That's great.
If it's all right for me to ask, how long have you been involved in English language teaching and development?
Okay. I have been an English language teacher,
Hmm.
formally
Hmm.
employed as an English language teacher since 1996.
Wow.
That's so many years. Now, when I talk to my students, I will say I started teaching long before they were born. Yeah, and that's why I said I'm more like a retiring grandfather now, and
Mm.
that's how I see myself. So since 1996. But prior to that, I've had a lot of teaching. I had a lot of teaching experience because
Hmm.
I went to school in a rural community,
Yeah.
and we were often called upon to go and support our younger peers
Mm-hmm.
because there was no teacher. And that happened even in secondary school,
Mm-hmm.
supporting the teaching of English language and also English literature at that time
Mm-hmm.
to the lower classes. So by the time I went to university, I was already involved in a bit of teaching. And while I was at the university, I had university lecturers who invited me to come and support their teaching. So I grew up in a family of teachers as well.
Mm-hmm.
So teaching has been part of me for a very long time. But I started formally in 1996 when I worked as a teacher educator, which
Mm-hmm.
is not very usual elsewhere in the world. In Cameroon, you could actually train directly to become a teacher educator for
Oh.
primary school teachers. So I worked at the teacher training college in a rural community in the far
Mm-hmm.
north, the predominantly
Mm-hmm.
Muslim far north of Cameroon. And I spent 8 years in that part of the country
Yeah.
working with with primary teachers, but
Mm-hmm.
also supporting English language education in secondary schools there.
Mm-hmm.
And I towards the end of my time, I think my last 3 years were also spent as president of the Far North chapter of the Cameroon English Language and Literature Teachers Association,
Yeah.
working with colleagues and their students. And those were the most enjoyable parts of my professional experience,
Mm-hmm.
supporting students and English clubs across the region from about 24 different secondary schools. And then I left and went down to work around the center. And a year
Mm-hmm.
later, I was appointed National Pedagogic Inspector in the Ministry of Education, which is a part of my experience, which, although enriching, is one I
Mm-hmm.
don't look back at with such fun as I look back at my
Uh,
early years of teaching. Yeah.
mm-hmm. I think probably a lot of our listeners look back on some positions they held with less positivity than others. So I think you're not alone there, Harry. And I have to say, I'm not going to call you Grandpa Harry because in 1996, when you started, I had been born
All
six
right.
years before in 1990. So it really sounds to me like you've been a teacher your whole life, even as, a teenager in school, mentoring your younger classmates. Is that
Yeah,
right?
I have. Yeah,
Hmm.
again, being the first of six children and coming
Hmm.
from an immensely tight network, family
Hmm.
network with the larger family, I picked up responsibilities quite
Hmm.
early, so
Yeah.
it does help in in nurturing the teacher that I became.
Hmm.
My wife goes mad when I start talking about my students as my
Hmm.
children. So I
Yeah.
refer to my students, even my MSc TESOL students. When I talk about them at home, it's always, oh, my children are lovely. They just, this child just did fantastic. But again, it's not just because I've grown old now. It's something,
Hmm.
it's a way in which I've always looked at my students.
Hmm.
I have, it's a job, but it's also a calling
Hmm.
to educate them, yeah, and to support them.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It sounds like you've been called to
Yeah,
lead and
absolutely.
mentor and care
Absolutely.
as part of education and a legacy, of course. If you're from a family of teachers and nurturers, then
Oh, yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So, thinking of we're now in 2025, so that was 1996. I'm an English teacher, not a math teacher, so that's
Exactly.
let me see.
Can we just be honest and tell our audience that we're going to use a calculator?
Yeah, I think so. Okay, let's calculate it. So it would be
It's
20,
29 years.
29 years. All right.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, so 29 years. That's over half of the life of TD6, right? If
Yeah,
TD6
yeah,
40. So,
yeah.
I mean, in 29 years, you've changed a lot. You've held a lot of different types of positions, had a lot of different relationships with colleagues and students, had a lot of roles. But if you look at English language teaching over that time, how has it changed? Like, what changes have specifically involved and affected you on your journey in English language teaching?
Right. My very early years of teaching, when I worked in the far north of Cameroon, when I was working in the secondary schools and not the
Mhm.
teacher training college, I had classes as small as 147 students and as large as 232 teenagers in a
Wow.
classroom. And those were my early experiences. So when I came to a point where I was beginning to write about, when I was getting into academia and writing and publishing about
Hmm.
language education, my focus was on teaching English in difficult circumstances, by
Hmm.
which I meant extremely large classes, low
Hmm.
resources in rural communities. That
Yeah.
was my background. A lot hasn't changed in terms of class sizes in many sub-Saharan African contexts
Hmm.
because the drive for education for all is not always accompanied by infrastructural improvement
Hmm.
and things like that.
Yeah.
And so there is still problems. There are still problems with um, classroom sizes, resource provision in those contexts. But what
Yeah.
has changed, and in my thinking and interactions with lots of teachers from this context, has been the fact that we tend to pathologize
Hmm.
the context in which they work by calling those circumstances difficult. But for many
Yeah.
teachers in the global south, that those are normal circumstances.
Yeah.
That's the natural classroom they know, and
Hmm.
they are navigating that in very creative ways that we
Hmm.
don't often read about in the mainstream northern literature on ELT.
Hmm.
So a big thing that has changed is that conceptualization of people's circumstances as being difficult. I think we've
Yeah.
moved past that. But there's also been a huge shift towards context appropriateness.
Yeah.
Where is the context within which people are working? And how are things done there? I think we
Hmm.
are more open now to learning from around the world than we
Hmm.
were in when I started. When I started out, if you were not reading the so-called big names, if you're not reading the
Hmm.
books that were written for Delta, Celta, and all of those books,
Yeah.
you were not doing ELT. But now there are more and more researchers, and there's a lot more teacher research now, and
Hmm.
teachers are connecting with what their own colleagues are doing
Yeah.
much more than they are connecting with the academic research that we had to depend on in our time.
Yeah.
But other things that have changed since then is also networking. I think
Hmm.
thanks to technology, there's been a lot of connection across the world now. So
Yeah.
we know that there are webinars happening right
Mm.
down there in Zimbabwe,
Hmm.
somewhere in Botswana. There are
Yeah.
webinars happening in Peru, for
Hmm.
example, and we can attend those. So teachers are learning from
Hmm.
each other across the globe. So there's bigger solidarity in our
Yeah.
within the profession now than it was in the past. And ITEFL is and TESOL, I would say, are running all these events, and all other
Hmm.
teacher associations are running
Hmm.
all these virtual events, bringing huge numbers of teachers together. So there's some solidarity in our profession.
Hmm.
The last thing I think, and which is important for me, is
Hmm.
the multilingual turn.
Yeah.
We've moved away from saying the native speaker ideal
Yep.
is now completely dismantled. It's all rubbish now. I think writing about that, as far as I'm concerned, is just
Hmm.
filling the pages because we've
Hmm.
gone past that. But essentially, to me, is the fact that we're beginning to look at how other languages
Hmm.
interact with English
Yeah.
and how English can strengthen other languages, and these
Hmm.
other languages can strengthen English language.
Yeah.
And so we're more and more tolerant now to multilingual approaches to
Hmm.
teaching and learning English language, because, of course, that's exactly how multilinguals learn a language. So
Hmm.
I think that those are significant shifts that I have experienced over time. It's not been, and of course, I'm avoiding technology a lot because with AI coming in,
Mm.
there is a lot that's changing, and that's
Hmm.
going to change really quickly in the profession.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So seeing ELT growing as a global community.
Yeah.
and teachers from all different contexts able to exchange ideas and support each other and to work together.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it is amazing.
Yeah.
And also, I love how you pointed out the way that English is working with other languages.
Yeah.
I love that. And we don't think about it all the time, but sushi is a Japanese word,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Pasta
Yes.
is an Italian
Yeah.
word. Why would we
Safari,
give it a new name?
Safari is Swahili.
Yeah.
Ubuntu is a South African language.
Yep.
So yeah.
Shakshuka.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I know I've said three foods because that's the easiest way to do it.
It's the easiest one to
You
remember.
can tell I haven't had dinner yet as well. Um, but
And talking about community,
yeah.
I just share a little brief story.
Mm,
So, Harry Waters,
yeah.
who was the other Harry,
Yeah.
the more important Harry now, I would say, who was IATEFL, one of IATEFL plenary speakers. I'd
Hmm.
never met him before,
Hmm.
but because of technology and that wider ELT community, that solidarity, we've
Yeah.
interacted a lot online, reading his
Yeah.
posts,
Hmm.
commenting, he commenting. And when we met in Edinburgh, it felt like we had known each other for a long time. And that
Yep.
was not just with Harry, it's with many other people
Yeah.
that I connect with online. And so when we meet, it's not like we are not introducing
Yeah.
ourselves to each other. We are connecting immediately because we've through technology we've had all of this connection. But yeah, okay, technology has made that possible.
Hmm.
But that too means that we are seeing each other within the profession now as part of that global family of professionals.
Yeah, absolutely. My first ITEFL conference in Belfast in 2022, I got into the elevator in my hotel wearing a mask because we were post-COVID.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
another woman got in with me and she pushed the button and she turned to look at me and she did a double take and she said, "Helen?" And I
Aha.
looked at her for a moment. I went, "Rachel?" And realized I was in an elevator with Rachel Sateri, who I had spoken to for 2 years on social media, but not met in person.
Yeah, so yeah, there's a lot to take from what technology has done to our profession.
Yeah.
Well, a few people, I would say, tend to look at the negatives of technology, but I
Yeah.
think it's often because of our
Mhm.
challenges with technology. I'm
Yeah.
very low tech, by the way,
Yeah.
but I do recognize the immense value it's got
Hmm.
in our profession, not just in the way we teach, but also
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
connecting us as human beings.
Yeah.
Because, like I say to my students, we are first and foremost human beings
Hmm.
before we become professionals. And to be a good teacher, you must first of all be a good human being.
Hmm.
Uh, because especially with young learners, a lot of my work has been with young learners. Affective and effective are
Hmm.
often the same thing for young learners. If they don't like the teacher, no matter how excellent you are in your pedagogy, there is
Yeah.
going to be a problem. But when they connect with the teacher as a human being, life becomes very easy.
The human element. We need
Yeah,
that human connection.
really.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, You you mentioned earlier that we're really seeing English as a communicative tool, and we're not viewing, we're not. I'm losing my words. What am I trying to say? We're not grading different types of English as more valuable than others. Where we're avoiding
Absolutely.
accentism and native speakerism and those things like that. We're evolving beyond it and looking at
Yeah, yeah,
professionals and learners as people.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll never forget when I was very young, starting out teaching back in 2015. And I was on holiday in Birmingham with some friends from Italy who I had taught in
Mm,
Italy and were now working in Birmingham. And one of them was dating a girl from Zimbabwe, and they were
mm,
working locally, in a pizzeria. And
yeah.
she said, "Oh, you're a language teacher. What do you think of my English?" I said, "Well, it's great. We've been talking for an hour." And she says, "People always tell me that my English is pigeon."
Oh,
And I was so angry on her behalf. Even at 25 years old, I hadn't heard the word, accentism. I hadn't
mm,
studied ELF or native speakerism, but I just thought, someone's trying to communicate you and you immediately denigrate them. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I like the,
absolutely.
yeah, and I
Yeah,
mean, as I say, that was 10 years ago now that we're in
yeah,
2025, but
yeah,
still, it's stuck with me. And I
yeah,
think
yeah.
that we need to keep moving forward away from
We
this
have to, yeah.
valuing.
Yeah, I think the thing is for a long time, language was seen as a product
Mm,
rather than a tool.
yeah,
And so and I must say this, that assessment hasn't actually evolved a lot
yeah,
because we are still assessing language in
hmm,
many mainstream educational systems. We are
yeah,
still assessing language as a product rather
hmm,
than as a tool for communication.
hmm,
And so we focus on the grammar, the vocabulary, and all of that at
hmm,
the expense sometimes of the message that
yeah,
students are conveying.
yeah,
And I still remember when I first came to the UK, I lived in Coventry, I was at Warwick University.
yeah,
And early in the morning, I'm walking up to campus, and then you meet people who look at you and go, "Are you all right?" And then I would look at myself and say, "Is there anything wrong with me? Why are
mm,
people asking me, are you all right?" But that was just hello, hi.
yeah,
Because my grammar teacher taught me when you meet someone, you say good morning. They say good morning, how are you? Fine, thank you.
mm,
And things like that. And so, are you all right? Was like a shock to me.
yeah,
But that was perfect English within the context in which it's spoken. And
yeah,
there are times when I've listened to Cameroonians in an international conference. I was following some Cameroonians at IATEFL, and
hmm,
they would say something. I understand them perfectly well, but I know that uh, members of the audience, some of them are struggling to understand because
yeah,
what they said was very appropriate in a Cameroonian context. So
hmm,
I think that, yeah, it's important that we continue to look at language
hmm,
as a tool for communication
hmm,
and a tool for communication within culturally specific contexts,
yeah,
while at the same time, of course, preparing our students for navigating the rest of the world. They've got to
yeah,
know that this is fine. It's fine to sound like this. It's fine to say things like this when you talk to people like you who understand your cultural context.
hmm,
But it's equally good to know that people elsewhere might say the same thing slightly differently,
hmm,
and that's fine.
yeah. It's important for us to focus on vocabulary and grammar, but also meaning,
Oh yeah.
because as long as meaning is understood, the communication will continue and it won't break down.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Uh,
And we've got a fantastic skill as human beings
mhm.
to check, to negotiate meaning. So
Yeah.
yeah, if you don't understand, you're going to find a way to ask
Hmm.
for an explanation. So yeah, we can navigate that and and stop stereotyping accents and
Hmm.
in the UK, for example, where when I came here, I learned a lot about RP.
Hmm.
I really don't know how much of RP I've heard in this country.
Me
I'm a
neither.
fan of Liverpool Football Club. When I go to Liverpool, it's a different kind of accent. When I'm in
Hmm.
Birmingham, it's completely
Yep.
different.
Oh, yeah.
When I go to Glasgow as
Hmm.
an external examiner on a program there, it's completely different. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
we don't have to be fixated on a particular way
no.
of doing things. When I go back to Cameroon now, they say, "Oh, you don't speak like one of us," and I recognize that I've been in the UK for a very long
Hmm.
time, so somehow you get assimilated. But there
Hmm.
are times when I speak, and you would tell that French and Agam are
Hmm.
influencing my pronunciation, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
all part of your linguistic profile,
yeah,
part of who you
absolutely.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
so many language learners who are learning English globally are coming from two, three, four languages.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
and they bring a real like richness into their language. And it would be a shame for us to train them all on RP and lose that, right?
And
It's just
lose that, yeah,
cultural
yeah, and lose that.
significance.
Again, because English is unlike French, which
Hmm.
is more like the classic language, everything that goes into the French dictionary has to pass through the Académie Française, for example.
Hmm. Yeah.
English is an embracing language. English has grown to be the world's largest, well, the world's most spoken
Hmm.
language because it does embrace other languages. It does
Hmm.
embrace vocabulary, expressions. sometimes even a bit of the grammar from different languages. So
Hmm.
I think it's important that we continue to grow the language
Yeah.
and embrace the world because uh, it's also a language for peace.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I hope it's okay that I say this, but it seems to me here that you've made a career and a lifetime out of embracing not only language but also others, your learners and your colleagues.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. And that's what has kept me going. That's what has
Yeah.
kept me going because the job can be frustrating sometimes.
Hmm.
Employers can be a pain
Hmm.
in the elbow, but but yeah, the people you interact with
Yeah.
keep you going. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of people, you've talked a lot about, your family and your colleagues. Are there any specific people who influenced your career or who you credit with really contributing to who you are today?
Yes, absolutely. Oh,
Hmm.
come on, don't open that. That's a very long journey. Anyway, I'll
Oh,
start with my primary school
yeah.
teacher when I was in my final year of primary school.
Hmm.
The late Pa Chewachong, we called him Father
Hmm.
Pa
Hmm.
Chewachong. He is the first person who bought a notebook for me and a pen, and he
Oh.
nicknamed me Jota Boy,
Hmm.
and he helped me to start writing. And when I wrote my first collection of poems, Scattered Thoughts and Emotions, I dedicated that to him. I still remember I was daft in mathematics, complete rubbish with mathematics, and I
Hmm.
still am very, very stupid with mathematics. Although if you've given me no, if you give me numbers followed by the or preceded by the pound sign,
Hmm.
I'll be good at those numbers. But
Yeah.
anything that's not got money to eat, I'm daft.
Hmm.
Anyway, so on my report, we call them report cards,
Hmm.
which we had every term. The final comment was always not good in numbers, excellent in words.
Hmm.
And so he inspired me to be a language person
Hmm.
in a context where boys were at that time seen to be scientists, and if you're going down the going down the language line, you were seen as a failure. He encouraged me
Hmm.
to be proud of that. So that was my first inspiration, and then there is also my French teacher in secondary school,
Hmm.
Mr. Ayok, whom we called Prof,
Hmm.
who was such a great inspiration. He helped me not just with my French, but also informed the way I became a teacher, the way I approach my students. He
Yeah.
was very communicative with French, which was quite rare in those days. French
Hmm.
was quite very classic and structured, and
Hmm.
we learned the conjugation and all of that, but he engaged us very creatively. And that later on in my professional life informed the way I worked with my students of English, who were mainly from the French-speaking parts of Cameroon. And then when I worked in the ministry, I had really good inspiration from Dorothy Forbin and the late Michael Nama. These were two pillars of bilingual education in Cameroon and also pillars of professional development and the Teacher Association. And they brought me into the Teacher Association. When I came to the UK, I still remember my first conference was in IATEFL conference was 2007 in
Hmm.
Aberdeen.
Hmm.
And a village teacher in the UK in the middle of a massive conference,
Hmm.
meeting all these big names I thought existed just in books and
Hmm.
were not human beings I would ever approach. It was great to see all these wonderful people.
Hmm.
But Wendy Arnold and Sheila Rickson did drag me into the Young Learner Special Interest Group at the time, and I eventually became a committee member, and that was the beginning of my journey into professional development through IATEFL and eventually growing through the ranks to becoming IATEFL president.
Gosh. It sounds to me like all of those influential people encouraged you to be a communicator.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think a bigger part of their role was
Hmm.
building the human in me, the human
Yeah.
values,
Hmm.
supporting others, being being selfless in
Hmm.
supporting others, because in doing so, you get a lot of support as well. I'd never wanted, I'd never even thought that I would be in a position of leadership. And every
Hmm.
leadership role I've had, be it Secretary General of the Cameroon English Language Teachers Association, over and
Hmm.
eventually Vice President, IATEFL committee member, up to becoming president of
Hmm.
IATEFL, all of those, I never had thought about any of them. But there were people, Linda Rose, and for example, and Professor Richard Smith, my PhD supervisor, who nominated me. They approached me and said, Harry, we think this is your time
Hmm.
because you would bring a lot to the association. And that was it. I've never really grown up wanting to be a leader. I've always been co-opted or pulled in by someone who thinks that
Called
I've
to
got
it.
something to contribute. So yeah, so it's all about the connections you make with human beings and
Yeah.
how they see you and how you support each other.
Yeah. So that's where your ELT journey is going in the future, where you're called to, where you're
Yeah.
needed.
Exactly, exactly. A lot of what I do now is mentoring.
Hmm.
I am part of the Africa Elder Female Leadership Mentoring project. I do mentor female leaders on
Hmm.
the continent. I am also part of the Teacher Research Mentoring Project for Africa Elder as well. But beyond that, I do a lot of mentoring with young colleagues in
Hmm.
India, yeah, and other parts of the world. So that's it for me. It's supporting, giving the experience of God to other teachers. And for some of them, it's not so much what I teach them, it's just the joy of having someone who can cheer them up. Some teachers, just because we are often, and that's something about a teacher education. When
Hmm.
we observe teachers, it's always to see what went wrong so we can help correct them. So we
Yeah.
always, all teachers always are victimized. Teachers are always pathologized. That's one of the words I used earlier.
Hmm.
We are always watching what they're doing to assess them.
Yeah.
But we often forget that crucial motivational component of teacher education. Just having someone there to say that was great
Yeah.
is enough to
Hmm.
inspire a teacher
Yeah.
and to bring them to a point where they work wonders in their classrooms.
Yeah. We don't need to focus on errors. We also need to lift our learners up
Yeah,
and point out
yeah,
their strengths and their
yeah,
abilities. Yeah.
absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right. Well, thank you so much, Harry, for talking to us today. I think that's a fantastic takeaway for our listeners, that they should take their role in ELT as a way to lift those around them up. Be a
Exactly,
mentor, be a human, be supportive and communicative. Thank you.
exactly.
Um,
Thank you.
I really appreciate you joining us today, Harry. If our listeners want to know more about you, how can they get in contact with you? Are you on LinkedIn or?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook.
Hmm.
I'm not a fan of Twitter anymore.
Fine.
So
Same.
LinkedIn and Facebook, yeah, you can find me. And on Facebook, I am not called Harry. I am Kuchah Nam Kuchah.
Hmm.
Nam is my mother's name because I come from a matrilineal
Hmm.
heritage. So my mother is far more important than my father.
Hmm. All right, thank you. To all our listeners, please follow up with Harry if he's inspired you today. Don't forget to stay in touch with TDSIG. You can follow us too. You can find us as TDSIG or IATEFL TDSIG on all platforms. Subscribe to the show to hear more great speakers like Harry. And thank you again to our sponsors, Nile, Cambridge, and the Bridge. Thank you for listening. And thank you again for joining us, Harry. See you all next
Thank
time.
you. Bye.